Right, so we are back and recording and still awaiting Kinesa for a minute. So we'll give her a minute before we continue, but I guess I could still have Anita answer that question as to which year, if we're looking to carry forward this loss now, which year are we going to carry that forward to? That essentially stems from the notes. So Kenny says here, yes, Kenisa, the question the last session closed off with was, which year are we carrying this forward to? After the first 2 years, Anita has it right. So after the first 2 years means year 3. So we're carrying it forward to T3. So carry forward not to here, not to there, but to here. So minus 4.4. And again, I put that in bracket form, formatted there. Right, so now that we have that, then we can call the next line taxable profits. Oh, wait a minute. I used the word taxable before. Oh no, that's not good. So let me not use this word taxable profit here. Let's call here, let's go back and change this. Let's call this line net profits. So again, if you say taxable, you could say taxable before carry forwards and whatever other concessions. So this line here will get us to the taxable value. And so what we can use to apply the tax. And now another little thing we'll have to do here is account for the fact that in the first 2 tax years, you have a concession, no tax in first 2 years. So probably put that as a little note, 0, 0. Here we now need to netto. And there we go as well. So NB, no tax in first 2 years. So with that, our next line becomes tax, corporation tax at, could somebody remind me of the rate? What rate is the tax going at from the question? Oh yes, give us another phrase we could have used there, adjusted taxable profits. That's fine, that could work perfectly fine. Right, so tax rate. From the question. Let me scroll up there. Somewhere around here. Well, it's not 20 because that's in the USA. Right now, before we get to the USA, we are in the Elandry. And Kanisa found it, it's 40. Where that 40 ran away. $40. 80%. Directors. Inflation. Okay. Not here. land way. I think. I wonder if it's out. No, it's not out of the view. Way up at the top. Let's go. 22. Oh my, yes, Ganesh is right. Included an annual corp tax rate of 40%. And this is where, of course, we had the concession of 0 somewhere on here as well, right? There we go. 0% corp tax in the first 2 years. So way up at the beginning, we had all of that. Great. So way back down now to our cash flow working here. Corp tax at 40%. Very good. So of course 0 here, 0 there. And equals 0.4 times up here, 16.2. Just grabbing that. 6.27, and with everything else as usual, we are dropping it down to 1 decimal, not 2, so that we have less stress. It needs also to be minus because tax is an expense that we have to pay. So in subtracting our tax of 16.2 and 6.3, we would now have to undo all of the adjustments we did. So the adjustments we did to these cash flows to make them into profits. How many adjustments did we do to the cash flows to become profits? 1. We have 1 adjustment here, which was for their depreciation, but there's something else in this area, Anita, which was not a cash flow. After the depreciation, what other number in there is not a cash flow? Come on. Right, this last line right here, that second adjustment is also a non-cash flow. So those 2 are the adjustments that we have to now undo, right? So let's go and undo those. Is that clear to everybody? So while the usual to undo is the depreciation because of the question scenario, and we have this loss business. Remember, loss just like profit, these are the non-cash flows. So because we made 2 of those non-cash flow type adjustments, we have to now add back the 2 of them. So add back, we could say non-cash flows. Excuse me. Non-cash flows. Firstly, we could say the depreciation and 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, and then plus carried forward, which was here since it was previously subtracted. Again, we'll add it 4.4, and here we go. Do we have numbers? There with the thing. Okay, my add back line seems to be missing something. Absolute profit in year 2 is 21.2. That's 0. Nope, nope, nope. That's not correct. That's our new value of our cash flow, but not the taxable profit, because the taxable profit has the note right there. Note there is no tax or not tax. Not is not the right word. There is no tax because of the tax treaty in the first 2 years, right? So the idea is, however, our cash flows, we now need to go straight back to the cash flow line in doing that add back. So this 4.5 is not adding back to 0. This 4.5 is adding back way up here to the 4.4. So what I should do is, yeah, 4.4, yeah. Tax loss to adjustments. Yeah, I should do it a little better than that. I should say that this is equal to our 4.4 add just the 2 lines of adjustments, that and add our loss line as well. Right, so that's the only 2 things we are adding back. So taxable profit is that tax is in the next line. We are not adding back the tax, very importantly, right? We are only adding back, as was mentioned, the 2 adjustments, which were depreciation, loss of cash flow, and we're adding that back to, loss carry forward. We're adding that back to the net profit or loss line. So I'm wondering, however, when we get to this 3rd line here, should we be adding that back to something else? All right, so this line here now would probably need another subtotal, or would need to account for the tax. So here we would have to say equal to, if we go all the way up here to net cash flow, we're already under the 4.4. So here we could start with a 40.6. To that, we need to subtract the tax, which we didn't subtract yet. And then, actually, in subtracting that, we need to use a plus sign on Excel. So we need to subtract our tax and add back our 2 adjustments, depreciation and the loss cash flow. Right, so is everybody clear with this column for T3? We didn't do a subtotal after the subtraction of the tax. So that's why we need to take our profit, subtract the tax from it, and it is that net total. To that, we are adding back the depreciation, and to that, we are adding back the loss carried forward. Is that clear to everybody? Can I see by the type of a quick yes that people are following this line? And before I press equal, somebody should give me the total. Yeah, so unlike the first 2 columns where we went straight up to the net profit or loss, here we have to look at the net that we have used, and that net being after the tax. So it's the after tax value. What we could think about is throwing in a line, a subtotal line, by saying net cash flow after tax, if we want. But then net cash flow may not be the best description of it. Why did this all of a sudden show up as that amount? I need it to show 1 decimal place. 1. Yeah, that's good enough. So same thing would apply here. Since we have tax to subtract, take in the profit minus the tax, and then do any of the adjustments to convert that profit back into a cash flow. Right, T2. Let's go with T2. What I could do to try and explain that again is to insert a line here. So before we do our adding back, let's find the subtotal. So what is this subtotal which we can add back things to, right? So let me label this. This subtotal now could be called after tax. Either it's a cash flow or it's a profit. So one of two things in this line. It's either going to be a cash flow or profit, but what was accounted for after tax. Since these first two columns had no tax, there was no tax adjustment. The profit is the profit. Actually, do I need to really call that cash flow? No, I could take that off and call that after tax profit, right? Or the usual PAT, profit after tax. So this is where T2 would now come in. What is the profit after tax? After tax, we still had effectively this loss of 4.4 minus. Is that clear? 4.4 negative. Yeah. So tax is not going to affect the value if it's a loss. And yes, definitely in this column as well, the profit that you had, 21.2, that was not affected by the tax, right? So while it was a profit, it was not a taxable profit because of the treaty for the first 2 years. So 21.2, it's brought down here to my subtotal line. Now, my after-tax profit line here, this would now be the sum of what I have as taxable profit minus the tax. And similarly, in the next column, profit minus the tax. And now I could say for this column here, instead of the fancy working I had before, now I could say it is simply the sum of these three. Right, and I should be having the same numbers, 25.7, 33 point something, and 13 point something. Right, there we go. So after tax profit, what I could say here is or loss. After tax profit stroke loss. Right, so that's that. Great. Any other queries there? Excuse me. So, right, what's next? If this now is our after-tax cash flows, what do we need to do with that? That's only cash flows from operations, so to speak. Right, so we need to now have our capital cash flows. And these would include investment as well as working capital. So land, machinery. Was there anything else we bought? Three things: land, machinery, buildings. Land and buildings and machinery. So what were those values? You could choose to list them out or just add them up from the question. We were told 21 trillion, 18 trillion, and 9.6. That will add up to 39. But where did the 0.6 run away? Shouldn't it be 39.6? No, the 0.6 is is working capital. So land and building same as 121 and 18. Okay, good. 30 and 19. Very nice. So yeah, capital cash flows. T0 here minus 39. And just formatting that. And then we have working capital. And that, as we saw, started off as our 9.6. And then that's now going to change. How did that change? Back up to the question. $9.6 is going to change. Working capital will need to be increased annually at the start of each of the next 3 years by 4. Anita is saying at the start of each of the next 3 years, at least. Hold on. Increased by what? Increase at BY at year 4. Increase at year 4. No, that's going to be released at year 4, Anita. If we follow what's being said here, it's going to be released by the end of project T4. But working capital will need to be increased annually at the start of each of the next 3 years. Here it is. Increase by what? Elandwy's inflation rate. So that's the amount we're going to increase it. We're not increasing it at year 4. As the blue highlight here is saying it's increasing, I could convert that to green now. Put in blue and yellow together at the start of each of the next 3 years. All right, so is that clear now? So we're going to each of the next 3 years. So what does that say? Are we going to increase it in year 4 or not? What's going to happen in year 4? Right, years 1 to 3 only. And in year 4, as it says here, which I'll convert to blue to green again, right? In year 4, we'll do the release. Good. So there's no negative in year 4. Year 4 will switch to the positive. All right, so the only thing we need to grab before we go back to the solution area is the rate of Elandwy's inflation, which I think were multiple rates for the different years. So here we go. Year 1, we increase it by 22%. Year 2, we increase it by 14.7. And in the third year, we increase it by 9.8. So punch those numbers for me. Of course, we would remember that for the 22, we are multiplying by 1.22. And in year 2, multiplying by 1.147. And in year 3, multiplying by 1.98. Now, when you do this, you will get the new increased value. And is that the actual cash flow required? If I go further down. Would the cash flow be the full value of 122%, let's say, in year 1? What would the real cash flow be? If the new working capital is that level, the difference is what the cash flow that we are looking for, right? So we really should be doing this in a working. So we'll find the new values, we'll find the 122%, but only the difference, only the update, only the change here is equal to the relevant cash flow. Right, so let's do the weekend and we'll see that from there. So working for the working capital, working for working capital, let's go. Working 6. So here in T0 we have starting value of 9.6 trillion, and then I could say total working capital, then I increase it equals that multiplied by 1.22, then I go to my next and say equals that by my, lost my rates now, that by yes, this 0, oh yes, I didn't write my 0 up above, so hold on, no, that's year 3. Year 2 is a 14.7, so times 1.147, and T3 is that number I need to punch for me. Yes, year 3. She did write year 3 next to it, that is also correct. Then times this, not times that, equals to this times 1.098. So yes, I need the 0 up above. And let me just fix this up. When I go back up, I'll change that. So 1 decimal place. Good. So that's our working capitals. And effectively, that's the 14.8 that will be released in T4. Right? So this is a 14.8 for T4. Whereas the relevant cash flows is only the increase in working capital. Now, we would appreciate that in the T0 year, there was absolutely none. So therefore, it increased from 0 to 9.6. But in the next year, it is increasing from 9.6 to 11.7. So that the value here increased to 13.3, and in T3 it increased to that. So the value here, which is relevant, is now going to be equal to the 11 minus the 9.6, 2.1. Here it's equal to the 13 minus 11. Here it's equal to the 14 minus 13. And of course, here it's equal to the 14. You could say 0 minus 14, but it's going the other way around. It is now reducing to 0. So the change is now positive. So once more, don't know why these went to 2 decimals. Change up to decimals. Is everybody okay at this stage with that last working? And these need to now be negative. How do I make that negative? I could subtract them the other way around and get a negative sign. That's just for Excel. Apart from that, I have to go through the long process of using brackets, which I think would be a little better in the long That no, is that no meaning I need to explain it over, or are we good? Last line, right. So that's where these little arrows come in. So let me do that over. So we're saying back here, while we have the values of the total working capital, right? Let's flash to the question and see how they told that to us, and then we'll come back here. So what did they tell us about the working capital? Oh my, 10 more minutes again. So what did it tell us about the working capital? Ran away from me. Up here, right? The working capital will need to be increased annually, right? So the working capital, now it's already in red. I'm trying to highlight, draw a line in red. That's not good. Will need to be. So what do they mean by the working capital? That now is the amount of working capital in total. So it's like a cumulative account. So it is like, again, if we think about it as raw materials, it's that amount of stuff that you would account for, and it's not really sold on yet. So it's that sort of holding account that represents as working capital. So it's an account that has what we call a balance or running balance, right? Another way to think about it is like an overdraft. So if every month you use up some of your overdraft, your balance increases, right? So the working capital account works like a balance. And in increasing that balance, right, what is the relevant amount therefore for the period? In increasing the balance, while the total balance will show you where you're at, which is the 11, the 13, and the 14, that is the total working capital, I could say, balance, right? The amount by which it increased is what we would call the relevant cash flow now. That is the amount basically that you could say was spent in the particular period. All right, so we need to know, we cannot throw in other words, we cannot throw in the 11.7 in the cash flow up above. We can only put in the 2.1 as the increase in that balance of the working capital account. Good. So only the increase is relevant. And think about it this way: as you end up at year 3 and you're now releasing all, what is the movement in the account? So the movement in the account is moving from a total of 14.8 and it's going way down to 0 as we are now reabsorbing all of it, or as they say, releasing it into generating funds. All right, so only the relevant cash flows, the increases or the amount spent or received as in T4, these are what go up into the cash flow now. Of course, not forgetting 9.6 occurring in T0 as well. So prior to that, you had nothing in working capital account, and now you spent 9.6 out of the working capital account. So that change, I could probably throw that down here. The negative here is negative 9.6, which is there in T0. Right, so taking those numbers up, negative 9.6 and then 2.1. Okay, getting squeezed here for my NPV working, so let me get some more space. And our 10 minutes is counting down. I have 6 more minutes. Let's see if I can do well. So 9.6, I already have that. Equals to the others. 2.1, etc. Right, and is there anything else we need to add in? That seems like everything. So we would now here say net cash flows in YRs. them off. Right. So with those, if those are NYRs, we now need to think about how are we going to do this NPV? Are we doing this NPV in YRs or are we doing this NPV in dollars? Which one? Right, and Anita has it right. We need to get this done in dollars. And what in a question told you that? Let's go and see. So once more up here, we have, where did it tell us about discount rate? Or did we say that in the report already? Right, here we go. Finance directors such as money could use project-specific discount rate of 12% instead. So we have the money cost of capital and the money project discount rate. And again, money is a company in the US. So redundancy costs, we decided to leave that out. So we have to now convert to the US because we have the US discount rate or US cost of capital. All right, so that we're clear with that. The reason for doing the NPV in dollars is because it is the money cost of capital. In other words, it is the dollars cost of capital. Right, and up here as well, the dollar discount rate, which we chose to use, 12. So, as well as that conversion, we now need to be aware of are there any other US dollar cash flows. So let's begin, and here is where we will now use our foreign exchange spot rates. So forex rates again. And the spot rate is once more in YR per dollars, 101.4, and I could copy the others from a line like here, 165, 180. Nope, that's a euro line, wrong line. YR forex rate YR to dollars. These are the values I'm looking for. Let's just zoom up here. Right, and any other dollar cash flows, we'll have to account for those to see what we have as the dollar cash flows. So I need more space actually. Let me get myself some more space. Right, let's multiply first. Instead of saying net cash flows, we could also call this project cash flows. I have less than 1 minute. So I'll have, so let me come back here first and change that. And by the time my minute runs out, we'll come back to say project cash flows in dollars. Project cash flows by R. So I'll copy that line here. And now say the project cash flows in dollars. So we'll stop off for a moment, get our new room, and we will be back.